So hi everyone, welcome back to our Oasis Rendezvous event. This next panel is on account abstraction. I'm William Wendt, Ecosystem Growth Manager at Oasis. We're joined by Harry, Product Manager for Opal and Sapphire at Oasis, Ahmed from Biconomy, founder of Biconomy, and John Rising from Stackup, CEO of Stackup. So yeah, I guess maybe a great place to start, guys, is just a general high-level overview. Like, what are the problems? Like, what is account abstraction? What is the general problems that we're trying to solve in this space?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, at a super high level, the goal of account abstraction is to make it so people can use blockchains without needing to understand fundamentally how blockchains work, just to do simple things or especially to do stuff safely. Account abstraction itself is, well, first, it's a terrible name. What it means is that an account itself on a blockchain chooses how it verifies transactions rather than necessarily just being like a private key pair. So basically, account abstraction means your account is programmable rather than just, a pair of keys that where you either have, sudo, you can do anything, remove RF, or you don't have any access at all.
Ahmed or Harry, do you guys have anything to add to that, or?
Yeah, I mean, I'd just like to add sort of one thing. I mean, it's all about, making things just super simple and easy. And account abstraction right now is fundamentally like the most promising, I'd say, piece of infrastructure that we, as a community that we could, strive towards in order to like achieve that collective vision.
Yeah, awesome. So I guess this is almost for my own clarification, but also I think probably a lot of users out there. When I was doing a lot of research into account abstraction, relayers, this idea of relayers is constantly brought up, but like, is account abstraction just essentially the same thing as relayers? Or is it just part of the stack? Like, how do they relate to each other? And maybe like, are there, differences between how traditionally we've thought of relayers and what's happening in account abstraction?
Yeah, so relayers are a very important part of the equation. So traditionally, relayers have basically been a piece of infrastructure that can receive a transaction someone wants to do and then initiate that transaction on chain. There's a fundamental limitation to most blockchain networks, which is that an EOA, or a public-private key pair, needs to initiate a transaction. And so in order to do things like what we call, atomic multi-operation, which is making multiple steps just into one, single approval, as well as initiating a transaction without needing a private key. Relayers enable that. The more recent excitement about account abstraction has been ERC 4337, which basically creates a decentralized network of relayers. They're not just relayers, but you can think of them as relayers that accept transactions, propagate them to a mempool, and then they then effectively build structures of user operations and put them on chain. And this alternative mempool, which is decentralized, is kind of like the big innovation behind ERC 4337 and why it's gotten a lot more interest in the last few months. But also the smart contracts themselves and all the framework is also a big part of account abstraction, because a user's account needs to be either a smart contract or otherwise something that can hold code on whatever blockchain it's using.
Ahmed, do you have anything to add to that as well?
Yeah, so just on the relay side, so we've been running relays for the past 3 years or so. I mean, this is more primarily towards the meta transaction use case to enable, gasless transactions for users. And what this essentially means, of course, is developers or the projects themselves are subsidizing the gas on behalf of their users. And so that was sort of at least our relay setup at Biconomy. And I think 437 in a way just takes it up a notch to the extent that the term is like the bundlers, same thing as relays really, but it's ultimately, they're like John said, very well, that there's this alt mempool. I'm not sure when ideally there'd be this P2P sort of bundler network, but that's still not there yet. But ultimately, these bundlers are sort of operating like relays, but within sort of more specifically towards the 437 framework. Like our current relays for the gasless meta-transaction setup can't be really used for the 437. Like it's just different from both a build standpoint and build security and like just operationally as well.
Awesome. Thank you for that. So my next question was for Harry. You know, we talked a bit about, or John talked about, 4337 and, sort of this idea of connecting EOAs or the private keys of EOAs with the idea of smart contracts. This is something natively supported on Oasis Sapphire. So I was wondering, how does 4337 functionality relate to Sapphire? Is there differences, or is it relatively similar?
So it acts similarly across all EVM compatible chains. So we all have lots of usability problems. I wanted to sort of bring up which gas, which chain, how many chains, how do I get onto this? And it's solving like a big problem. So I really focused on usability of if you send someone $200 on some chain, they have to find gas, and having relays and the relay infrastructure allows you to sort of unstick that chicken and egg problem of, I can pay for my transaction with the dollars I've just received instead of having to find, the right gas token and then convert it and all of that. But in terms of like Sapphire with the confidential aspect, there's lots of things we can do that can sort of radically simplify this. So there's still a position for relays because they're using a sort of vital sort of unsticking part of the solution. But maybe we can simplify this with sort of confidential contracts and add privacy to that as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm really excited to sort of see as we build up the stack for Sapphire, all the different applications that it can fit into and integrate with. But I think as a general point, if you've been following ETHCC at all, account abstraction has been a pretty massive topic. Vitalik sort of gave a whole speech about it yesterday, and everywhere you hear is like the solution is account abstraction. So we see like an endless amount of use cases and potential areas where account abstraction will be beneficial. But I'd love to know more about Stackup, Biconomy, and Oasis Sapphire. Where are the areas that you find it will be most, like where are you guys focusing, and where are the use cases that you think are the most important, or maybe I guess your focus area? Maybe Ahmed to start this time.
Yeah, sure. So for us at Biconomy, okay, perfect. So for us at Biconomy, we've because we've been doing a lot of like gasless relaying for a couple of years and have seen like quite a few problems. For us, when we looked into account abstraction, sort of, I'd say a bit more than a year ago, it sort of helped us to sort of look again at the problem statement, see what applications, even wallets as well, really need. And essentially for us at Biconomy, it's all about making developers experiences, or at least enabling developers to offer these effortless experiences for their users. And so when we think about that, what does that really mean, right? How far, from the onboarding to the actual transactional element, do we want to sort of help solve problems for? And essentially, what we have today at Biconomy, we have our modular SDK, which essentially is a full stack solution for smart accounts, paymasters, and bundlers. And this essentially means, developers, be it wallets or applications, they could sort of enable this sort of, all of this into their stack, or they could sort of say, we want to use just the smart accounts, or they just want to use the bundlers, or just the paymasters. So it's modular in the sense that, they don't need to be sort of locked in, but if they want to, they can, and they will get benefits for doing so as well. So for us, it's more about providing, a seamless full stack solution.
Awesome. Thanks so much for telling us a bit more about like what Biconomy is doing. John?
Yeah, sure. So Stackup is kind of like the OG 4337 like infra provider. We actually started as a company about a month after the very first draft of ERC 4337, and we tried to build the first ever like smart contract wallet off of ERC 4337. And the reason we did that was, if you look at a lot of smart contract wallets historically, they've done a really great job building a very good user experience within their own like closed ecosystem. But the thing that was really missing, and why they hadn't really fully caught on with like a consumer base, is that interoperability and that despite the best efforts of those projects, hadn't really gotten adoption of a standard that everyone would use and kind of gain consensus around. So that's why we went like, hey, ERC 4337 is likely the solution to that. And I'm very happy to see that the ecosystem, seems to agree and that there's a lot of momentum going that way as well. However, as we went to build our first wallet, we had to implement all of ERC 4337's ourselves, and it was really, really hard. And we realized that for it to work and for it to have all the benefits, we needed like broad ecosystem adoption and that there needed to be an infrastructure player. And so we decided to become that infrastructure player. And also we're way better at building infrastructure than like a consumer app. They're two totally different things. So we provide bundlers, paymasters, nodes, data APIs, and otherwise, like help hold people's hands through implementing ERC 4337 for their specific application. But one of the reasons I'm actually excited to speak here at this Oasis event is just like how privacy, I think, is like one of the big unsolved problems that we have to solve in blockchains. Like user experience and making it so that users can use a blockchain safely without like fundamentally needing to know how it works is like also like an existential problem for blockchains.
Yeah, I completely agree. Really quick before I have you weigh in as well, Harry, both of you guys mentioned the idea of paymasters and bundlers. Can we just define those really quickly for the audience? Or maybe Ahmed, you can do paymaster, and yeah, sure. John, you do bundling.
Paymasters essentially, you could think of them as an on-chain contract or itself an entity that deals with gas. So essentially, you could have a paymaster that actually sponsors gas fees for users. You could have a paymaster that essentially takes USDT or Pepe token or whatever token the application or the wallet will allow, and the paymaster will essentially manage the risk of taking different tokens and essentially paying the gas fee in the native token of that blockchain itself. Those are, I would say, the two main use cases of paymasters today. Like we can sort of go technically sort of deeper, but ultimately this is sort of, I'd say, the demand that we're seeing in terms of paymasters. There are like lots of interesting sort of, like it's a wide design space. I'm seeing ideas for like MEV paymasters or maybe other type, like I'm not sure what that exactly means, but it's an interesting design space that that people could work on. And the second thing I want to say as well, like at least in terms of like the paymaster design, you could have a fully decentralized on-chain type paymaster, but you could also have like a hybrid on-chain versus like on-chain and off-chain component as well. So yeah, it doesn't necessarily need to be fully on-chain for it to work. So, but these are just design choices depending on the use case.
Yeah, one of the great, powerful, and amazing things about ERC 4337, as well as like one of the worst things about it, is that it's like this huge open framework where like you can do so much that the design space is so huge it like is taking a bit of time for people to explore it. Bundlers are basically just decentralized relayers. What they do is they receive user operations, propagate them out to a private or rather to a public mempool, and then they take all these user operations, put them into a structure, and submit them on chain to a contract called the entry point, which handles the verification execution of those. But the important thing with bundlers is that it's basically a decentralized relay network that anyone can join, and it's permissionless. And the reason why bundlers aren't just relayers is they have to have all this logic to prevent the network from being like DOS attacked because the network is permissionless.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for those definitions. I think, account abstraction is still new, so it's helpful for everyone to sort of get an idea of what all these jargon and terminology is. But refreshing your memory, Harry, to the question that originally started this was like, what sort of use cases, one, do you think Oasis Sapphire is suited for, and as well as which ones maybe are you the most just interested to explore?
I'd say I'll probably start with like my biggest frustration at the moment, which is whenever I do anything on Ethereum, I get like 50 transactions, all trying to pretend that they were sort of in my address book, or they're trying to confuse me so that I, end up sending to the wrong person. And I think just fundamentally, if you had a little bit of privacy, for onboarding new users who are not familiar with it, there's so much sort of education you have to do of be aware of this, be aware of that, and privacy solves most of that, and then gas sort of relays and account abstraction does the other half. So I'm really looking forward to making it easy to use this. So on a day-to-day basis, if you try to get your grandmother to go and use Ethereum, it's going to be a long, difficult conversation, right? But in terms of like what's upcoming, I definitely think like contracts that can sign their own transactions could fit into this in interesting ways, and we're still exploring that. But also like WebAuthn and Touch ID and passkeys, to be able to make it simpler so you don't have to have MetaMask or browser plugins. I think that we can streamline things and sort of make it all fit together nicely with this stack of sort of Sapphire and account abstraction.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you so much for that. I guess you touched a lot on privacy, but where do you see privacy fitting into the account abstraction stack? Is there, I know that account abstraction itself offers some levels of privacy, but like what can Sapphire offer that essentially is not available on other EVM networks today?
I'd probably go into like censorship resistance. So there's been a lot of problems in the past few years where most of the Ethereum nodes have turned out to be sort of de facto under US jurisdiction, and therefore you have to censor or you can't mine some transactions. So while there is censorship resistance sort of built into 4337 and the sort of distributed mempool, if you're doing sort of encryption, which is something you can do on a confidential EVM, then as a relayer or as a service provider, you have end-to-end encryption of your users, and you don't have to worry about what you're observing or what you're enabling, or you can remain neutral. So I think neutrality is a good option.
Yeah, I think so as well, and I think that's been a long time sort of goal of Oasis is to offer this this censorship resistance, this privacy to really empower any Web3 user. But on that note, privacy in account abstraction, I'd love to get thoughts from both you, John and Ahmed, on where you think privacy fits in.
Yeah, account abstraction does not directly address privacy. It gives a bunch of tools to make accounts programmable, which enables a lot of safety features that are privacy related. One example is that a Paymaster could sponsor a transaction for a new address to be created, and that doesn't link that new address to anything except for that Paymaster. And if that Paymaster is itself permissionless or otherwise, has a lot of volume, there's really no way to connect that new account to anything, to another account, and so it kind of becomes pure in that sense, or rather clean. However, it does not solve a lot of problems, such as that fundamentally the state of most EVM chains is public for every single address. And it does not necessarily solve things like, hey, the owner of this account is this address, or, like these number of signatures have been signed. There are ways that you can conceal it, but it by itself does not provide that mechanism directly. But it enables basically accounts to be programmable, which is like a very important prerequisite to like to making like private applications.
So for us, like of course, when it comes to privacy, like it's like we work with some institutions, and for them, like what's really top of mind is privacy. Like they need privacy in order to enable certain use cases and be able to actually really go into production at scale. And so like like what we just said earlier, right? Like one half, is that the actual usability and abstraction side of things, and the other is the privacy that's needed to for us to enable the ease of use for these accounts. So like John said, like for us, we don't see like so much how privacy would be in a way be solved by account abstraction. It would be like just where does that intersection lie, for the two to come together. And of course, like networks like Oasis would make so much sense, right? To see how, how account abstraction could play there to enable, an easy private UX layer. So yeah, I mean, it's a no-brainer, to be honest.
Yeah. I thank you for those insights. I think the sort of theme or the underlying repetitive message so far is like, hey, this is a new space. There's so much to explore, like in all these different areas, whether it's paymasters, privacy, bundling. I guess we're coming up on time now. The last question I want to pose to you all is, one, how can someone like get involved with your individual projects? Like how can they start integrating them? As well as like how can they just get involved with account abstraction, and what problems can they start looking to solve? What is the future looking like? So yeah.
Yeah, sure. So Stackup has a self-serve free tier, so have at it, stackup.sh. We also have, pretty much all of our software is open source. And in particular, one area that like the whole ecosystem needs to do is make it easier to build applications with ERC 4337. That's something certainly like Biconomy is solving, and it's super important. Most of what we do at Stackup is more at like the base infrastructure layer, but it's still a hugely important problem that we have a lot of stake in having it solved. So certainly contributions to some of the open source projects, such as like userop.js, which is like Ethers but for user operations, as well as the next big step is the peer-to-peer network coming online. The very first full implementation of the specification has already been completed with one bundler implementation already. And we are hoping to do tests with all of the various bundler implementations, or the primary ones, in early October. So that's kind of roughly the timeline that we hope for that to happen.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would say a couple of things. So first, there's this really awesome Telegram group called 4337 Mafia. So like if you want to get added in there, just like ask one of us. But it's great. It's very active. Lots of insights. Everyone really working on account abstraction is pretty much there. So it's a great place to just start to get to know people and just get into the conversations. Like John said, there's so much open source, open source software out there, like just related to everything around, account abstraction in general that anyone could really get involved in. And at least for us at Biconomy, we're like, what's really exciting the next 2 weeks, we're launching our modular smart accounts. And essentially this is like a framework for, a new type of sort of account architecture that's modular, and that sort of allows, anyone to build like different types of plugins. And so like we're launching this with 2 plugins such as session keys and passkeys. But what this basically means is that anyone could build any type of plugin. It could be like recurring payments or DCA type plugin, or a new signature scheme as well. So like this sort of plugin infrastructure at the account level is also going to be growing as well. So anyone could get really involved in that as well.
Awesome. Thank you. I have to check out 4337 Mafia. And Harry, just any last closing thoughts on?
Join our Discord. If you want to develop things, join our Discord. I'm there. We're super helpful. But also try to get your grandmother to use stuff, because this is where you find the usability problems. And then there's so much stuff that we do so often that it's obvious, right? But if you, like Biconomy especially, you're solving this sort of onboarding problem in interesting ways. So it's talk to old people and see what they say.
Are there, I guess, more specific than talk to old people? Are there specific problems that you would advise people to come to us in the grant program and try to solve? Or
yeah. So we've got our hackathon launching today, and everything from account abstraction to relays to bridges to encryption, authentication. There's so much that you can do with confidential EVM that it just needs a bit of a mental shift, but then there's a whole space that's opening up.
Awesome. Thank you to. Oh yes, absolutely.
Can I just ask a question to everyone? Who's actually using a contract wallet or a smart account?
We have some improvements to make. Harry was the only one.
But everyone's in crypto, right? So we need to, like, if we believe in this, we should also dog food. You know,
That's Harry's line.
right? So just putting that out there as well.
Yeah, so everyone go out today and start working on your smart wallet. But thank you to all of our panelists today. I think we had a great discussion. I think we all learned a lot, and hope you guys all have a great rest of the session. Great. Thanks a lot.